Okay, here is example 5, and I just clipped the part just above it on page 94 because that's something that you need to know to be able to do this example. Okay, so I put that on top. And it's just kind of steps for solving it for angles. We've been trying to find the sine and cosine tangent giving the angle. And now we're going to find the angles if we're given one of the ratios. Okay, so step 1, we have to determine which quadrant the solutions will be in by looking at the sign of the given ratio, right? And sometimes you'll have to. So if it doesn't specify the quadrant, just like in that last question, we had a negative cos value. So if it hadn't told us that the answer was going to be in quadrant 3, we would have had 2 answers, right? One in quadrant 2 and one in quadrant 3, because that's where we would have negative cos values. Then we solve for the reference angle, okay? And when we do that, we're going to take the positive of the trig ratio, okay? Then we sketch the reference angle in the appropriate quadrant and use the diagram to determine the measure of the related angle in standard position. Okay, so I'll show you exactly what that means right now. Number 1, okay, we know that the sine value is 1.5. Okay, so sine theta equals, or 1 point, obviously not 1.5 because sine has to be between -1 and 1. Okay, so it's 0.5. If you put that in your calculator, right, you guys hope you know how to do that. You just take the second function sine and put 0.5. That's a 30-degree angle, okay? And they have a little r there to remind you that we're looking for our reference angle right now. Okay, so the reference angle is 30 degrees, okay? Now, we have to sketch it. We've solved for the reference angle, and we need to sketch it in the appropriate quadrant, okay? So since we're looking at anything between 0 and 360, okay, not including 360, but possibly including 0. We know that we're going to be looking for something that's in, well, in any of the 4 quadrants. And because we had a positive sine value to start with, we know that we're going to be looking for something in the first and the second quadrant. Those are our 2 answers here. So sketch that reference angle. That means I want to show a 30-degree angle from the x-axis, okay? And since it can be in both sides, I need to draw 2. Okay? Now, once you look at that, you can use the diagram to determine the measure of the related angle in standard position. So we have 2. This one's actually already a standard position angle. So our angle could be 30. Okay? And if we want to know this one in standard position, we actually remember back from 2.1, we had to do, for second quadrant, we took 180 minus the reference angle. You don't have to remember that. You can actually tell just by looking at this, those 2 angles have to add up to 180. So we have 2 solutions here. It's going to be 30 and 180 minus 30 or 150. So those are our solutions. Okay. For B is a negative. Okay. And so like it says here with that technique it tells us to use, it tells us to solve for the reference angle, okay, and in this case our angle that we were given was had a negative cosine. We're just going to use the positive to find that reference angle, okay. It just seems to be a little less confusing that way, so I said I was going to use the positive and then I wrote the negative, but obviously, yeah, use the positive. So you're going to put square root of 3 over 2 in your calculator. Okay, take the second cos of that. All right, and you're going to get 30 again. Okay, so our reference angle is 30. All right, now we want to draw this, and we need to draw that reference angle in the correct quadrant. So we're looking for the quadrants that have cos as negative. So since we know that cos is positive in the first and fourth quadrant, we're looking in the second and third quadrant to find the negative cosine value. Okay, so we'll draw a reference angle. That's a 30-degree angle right here. Okay, and we'll also have one just right below it. That's a 30-degree angle. Okay, so we're going to determine what our actual standard position angles are. Okay, and so again, like because it's in second quadrant, you can go 180 minus the reference angle. Okay, you might just look at that and say, okay, that's a 150-degree angle. And then this other one here is going to be 180 plus the reference angle. So you're going to have a 210-degree angle. Okay, so your 2 solutions, there's 2 solutions here because they don't Oh, they do specify. Darn it. Okay. Yeah, see, I misread the question. Right there, it tells us it has to be between 0 and 180. Okay, make sure you check that. This one actually, we're not including our 210-degree angle. So I could have just skipped this part right here. Sorry about that. I didn't even have to do that because when I knew it was either in quadrant 2 or quadrant 3, but it has to be less than 180, then I could have just stopped and said, okay, no, it's going to be the one that's in the second quadrant. I only had to draw that one. Okay. Anyway, so now I guess you know how to do it if it didn't tell you that, but since it did, we have one solution, and that solution is, again, 150. Okay? So 30 is not a solution here. Keep that in mind, okay? This is not a solution. It was our reference angle. In this case, 30 was one of our solutions, okay? But in B, it's not.